G'day and welcome to the Mind Your Body Show, episode number 61. I am your host, Jacob Andre, and today I am talking about how to manage your gym routine and when to change exercises. This question here is from one of our listeners, and it came through on Instagram. So if you would like to ask a question, which will be on one of these future fortnightly solo episodes, then please send me an email to info@jacobandre.com or a message through Instagram at Jacob_Andre. So before I get into it, I want to talk about a quick free course, which I have available on my website over at jacobandre.com. It is all about running mechanics 101. So if you are an athlete looking to maximize your performance to succeed at the top level, and running is a major part of your sport, then I highly recommend you get your hands on this course, get yourself into the course. You can get instant access by heading to jacobandre.com and signing up with your name and email. Inside this course, you are going to get access to 9 modules, which include biomechanics of running, posture and alignment, stride length and frequency, foot strike and arm swing, running drills and exercises, calming running injuries, plus nutrition for runners and mental strategies for runners. As I said, head on over to jacobandre.com to get access to that course. So this week, I'm talking, as I said, about how to manage your gym routines and when to change exercises. Now, when it comes to writing a gym program, the key is starting with the end in mind. You need to know where you're going. From there, you can work your way back as far as you want, but be aware of the requirements of your sport and ensure you systematically build these requirements until you reach your peak at the end. Now, what I like to do is I create this skeleton, and with that skeleton, I've got everything through the different cycles, which I'm going to talk about in a moment, but it includes a whole bunch of exercises. So I have exercises listed, every exercise that I know of, listed on a document and categorized based on movement and muscle groups. And so as I work my way through developing a plan, I start with the more regressed versions of an exercise, and I build upon these, ultimately becoming more complex as the program, as the entire plan nears an end completion point. So from there, once I've added in those exercises based on that, through that list, I'll then add in the reps and sets depending on what the requirements of the sport are. So I liken writing a training plan in a similar way to building a house. And so let's just say you've got a builder comes in and I've got a whole bunch of tools. Those tools are like the exercises. So a strength and conditioning coach's repertoire of exercises is like the tools in the toolkit of a builder. So it's about knowing which tools to use for which job and when to use them, when best to use them. So the more tools you've got at your disposal, so the more exercises you've got at your disposal, the better you can program or build your house, the better you can program for somebody in order to build their body, essentially, and ultimately improve their performance. So when it comes to programming, you need to look at macrocycles, mesocycles, and microcycles. So every good plan consists of these. Macrocycles are typically months to years. Mesocycles are typically weeks to months, and microcycles are typically days to weeks. So my macrocycles typically consist of a 6-month preseason and a 6-month in-season. My mesocycles are typically 3-month programs, and my microcycles are typically 4-week phases. So they're monthly, and I call these phases. So it's a 4-week phase. So my microcycles are phases, my mesocycles are programs, and then my macrocycles are seasons. And that's how I like to define it. Anyone can do it however they like to do, but this is how I do it. So when it comes to managing your gym routine and when to change exercises, the first thing you need to do is to create the layout. This is like laying the skeleton of how you're going to then implement all those exercises into. So you've got those 3 cycles, your macro cycle, your mesocycle, and your microcycle. So this is how I like to do it. So you have your 6-month preseason, that's your macro cycle. And within that, I'll have 2 mesocycles. So I'll have program 1 and program 2. So program 1 goes for 3 months. And within that, we'll have our microcycles. So I'll have 3 microcycles, which I call phases in that mesocycle. Stay with me here. So we have phase 1 microcycle, which typically is called general physical preparedness, goes for 4 weeks. We then go into phase 2, general physical preparedness 2, and then phase 3, general physical preparedness 3. And that makes up our first half of the 6-month preseason, which is our first 3 months. And that's our program 1 3-month mesocycle. From there, we then move into program 2. So our second mesocycle, also 3 months. And within that, we have phase 4, 5, and 6. So remember, these phases are monthly. So we have specific physical preparedness 1, specific physical preparedness 2, and specific physical preparedness 3. And each one of them is 4 weeks each, ultimately building up to 12 weeks or 3 months. Then we move into the second part of the macro cycle, the in-season. And so that 6-month in-season is our macro cycle. Same thing, we have program 1 mesocycle, which goes for 3 months, and program 2 mesocycle, which goes for 3 months. So you can see that these mesocycles, there's 4 of them. They go for 3 months each, 3, 6, 9, 12 months. So in our second macro cycle, our in-season macro cycle, the program 1 is 3 months, and we have our microcycles, which is phase 1, general competition 1, phase 2 or month 2 of the in-season program, general competition 2, and phase 3, general competition 3, each one of them being 4 weeks each, a month each. Then we have program 2 of in-season, so the second half of in-season, and it's the same thing, phase 4, but this is now called specific competition 1, phase 5, which is specific competition 2, and phase 6, which is specific competition 3. So just to quickly recap, we have 2 seasons, pre-season and in-season, each goes for 6 months. Each one of these seasons has a program. So we have a mesocycle, so 4 programs. So program 1 goes for 3 months, program 2 goes for 3 months. So first half and second half of pre-season. Then we move into in-season, and we have program 1 and program 2. So first half and second half of in-season programming. And each one of those mesocycles or 3-month programs is broken down into phases, which are monthly. And we have phase 1 through to 6, so 6 months of preseason. The preseason is general physical preparedness, and the second half of preseason is specific physical preparedness, building up for the season starting. Then in season, we then have the same thing, program 1 and program 2, first half and second half of in season. The first half of in season is general competition, and the second half of in season is specific competition. So ultimately, it takes us through an entire 12-month program from day 1 of preseason through to the end point, which if it's a sport like football, it would be our grand final day. If it's an event like running, then it would be our competition day. So once you've got your skeleton or you've created your layout with those 3 cycles, the macro cycle, mesocycle, and microcycle, it's time to now add in the exercises. And as I said, I take my exercises from a list. I've written all the exercises that I know of, and I'm always adding new exercises to this as I learn new exercises. It's an ongoing learning process. I've been doing this for over 20 years, but I'm still always learning new things. So I'm always adding new exercises. And those exercises are classified depending on the movement. So it might be squatting pattern, hinging pattern, pushing, pulling, whatever it might be. So if we look at the 7 fundamental movements of human movement, we have got bracing, which is foundational to the other 6. Then we've got squatting, lunging, and hinging, which are our lower body, pushing and pulling, which are our upper body, and then rotation. And pushing and pulling can both be broken down into vertical and horizontal. So vertical pushing, like a shoulder press, horizontal pushing, like a bench press, vertical pulling, like a wide grip pull-up, and horizontal pulling like a seated row. So you've got the 2 different versions within the pushing and pulling. And as I said, the number 7 is rotation. I don't know if I mentioned it, but number 7 is rotation, and that's the last one. So we've got bracing, squatting, lunging, hinging, pushing, pulling, and rotation. And so if we liken this to a house, obviously it's starting to sound like I love my building analogies here, but the brace is kind of like your slab of concrete, which you lay down first, and then from there. And so there's all different exercises. So you're bracing, and your bracing is a movement, your squatting is a movement, your lunging is a movement. So these are all movements, but then each one of them has exercises within that. It's kind of like a Lego set where you buy the box and you see the picture of the finished product on the box. That box with the entire scene that you're going to build from with that box is like your movement. And each individual Lego piece are like your exercises. And so you can then regress those exercises to more simple versions that anyone can do. And then you build upon that and you make them more complex through to the most complex. So you progress those movements to more complex versions. So I like to break up, I'll classify all of my exercises based on those 7 fundamental movements, and sometimes also by muscle group, depending on how I need to use those exercises in a program. So each workout has a focus, and I typically start each workout with 2 main lifts. It might be, say, for example, bench press and squats. It might be shoulder press and deadlift, for example. And so these are usually compound lifts, and compound lifts just mean multiple muscles, multiple muscle groups. So you're using a whole bunch of muscle groups in one. And so they're mainly your big lifts. The 4 most basic big lifts, as I've just mentioned, are bench press, shoulder press, squats, and deadlifts. But as you become more progressed with those exercises, they move into things like clean and press and snatches and stuff like that at the high end, the more complex versions of those exercises, and you're starting to get full body power sort of exercises. This is then followed in the workout by a range of accessory exercises, which may be compound or isolated. So they're accessory exercises, which means that they kind of support what you're doing in the main lifts. They may be compound in that you're using multiple muscle groups, or they may be isolated in that they're using single muscle groups. So for example, a sissy squat might be an example of an accessory exercise, which is compound because you're using multiple muscles. So you're using your quads, your glutes, your hamstrings. And an isolated exercise, for example, might be a single leg isometric hold for the hamstring, or it might be a single leg curl. It's where you just targeting that single muscle, the hamstring. Or it might be, for example, a single leg or even double leg extension, where you're targeting the quad muscle. So isolated meaning that you're targeting one muscle or one group of muscles. Obviously, the quad's made up of 4 muscles, the hamstring is made up of 3. So that's an isolated exercise, which is where you're using one muscle, the quads, the hamstrings, the biceps, the triceps, whatever. Okay, then number 3 is you're going to then add in the reps and sets. So typically the volume is reps times sets. So you can have, say, 3 sets of 12, which is 36 reps in total. You might also have, for example, 6 sets of 6, which is also 36. So you can have your volume made up in different ways, depending on what you're trying to achieve out of the session. So your volume is your reps times sets. So typically your volume is higher in preseason, depending on the sport, and progressively comes down until we reach the final phase of in-season. This can be a little bit fiddly as I'm trying to find the right balance for each phase. So often as I'm programming it, I do need to kind of go back and forth a little bit just to figure out how those reps and sets are going to fit best for that phase that you're in, but also for the exercise that you're specifically trying to achieve. So in summary, knowing how to manage a gym routine and when to change exercises is a complex process that I have learned and practiced for over 20 years and continue to practice to this day. An effective strength and conditioning coach is one who keeps an open mind and is willing to learn constantly. And there's always more to learn. That's the one thing that I've learned, is that there's always more to learn. So this process of learning how to do this is something, as I said, that I've been constantly refining over my 20 plus years in this industry, working in sport and fitness. And it's something that I will continue to refine forever and ever until I stop doing this work. So it can be quite difficult, but it's something which I really am passionate about and absolutely love doing. So if you've got any questions about how to manage your gym routine and when to change exercises, then please feel free to reach out. Send me an email to info@jacobandre.com, or head on over to Instagram and send me a direct message there. My Instagram handle is Jacob_Andre. And at this point, I'd love to know also, what are you training for? So reach out to me on one of those 2 ways and let me know, what are you training for? So this has been an episode which is a question from our audience. I have absolutely really enjoyed looking into this. I've actually done this as a blog as well. So you can head on over to my website at jacobandre.com and read the article. And while you're there, as I mentioned at the start, there's a free course there for you to get instant access on Running Mechanics 101. As I said at the start, you're going to learn everything from biomechanics of running through posture and alignment to stride length and frequency, foot strike and arm swing, running drills and exercises, common running injuries, as well as nutrition for runners and mental strategies for runners. It's on the homepage as soon as you hit jacobandre.com, and you can sign up and get instant access to that course. And if you'd like to know anything else, please reach out to me by email or on Instagram. Thank you for joining me on this episode, and I'll be back next week with a new topic. Enjoy yourself. Good luck with your training, and I'll speak to you soon.